Good morning. It is another day. I had a really rough day yesterday in the shop. Uh, yeah, I'll talk about that in another video sometime. But boy, I had a bad wreck. All right. So, today's a new day. In my last video, I did a lot of, I talked about what I listened for in a guitar that I'm doing. What I listen for in guitar. I did a lot of tapping on the bridge. And my point of tapping on the bridge was to show you the kind of response that you get from an instrument that shows up in the actual playing of the guitar. So the playing of the guitar is one thing, but there are things that influence, the sound of it. The sound of the guitar is one thing, but there's things that are below that sound that influence the sound. In other words, the foundations of the guitar, the woods, the construction, all those things, all the components of a guitar are the foundation of the thing that influence the sound that you get out of it. So this is a 70s D28 that's in progress right here. It's almost done. I'm going to get it done here pretty soon. The braces are not scalloped. That's the last thing that I haven't done to this thing. It's had the popsicle done. It's had the tuners done. It's had frets done. It's had a neck reset. It's had a new bridge plate in here, which I think is a Southeast Asian rosewood. It's a dark rosewood. Pretty sure. Bridge has been scooted. Everything has been done to this guitar except for the scalloping. So what I want to show you is the tap tone of a pre-scalloped guitar. I'm going to compare it to two other guitars over here, a D28 1941 Authentic, which is fully scalloped, and my shop 70s 3 D28, which is half scalloped. It's only got the X braces scalloped. So we're going to have a scalloped, we're going to have a half scalloped, and then we're going to have a fully scalloped guitar. And then I'm going to go scallop the X braces on this one and bring it back over here, and we're going to see how the tone changed on that. How does the tone change between the non-scalloped and the half-scalloped? Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of things that I'm looking for in the sound of this thing. So if you do this, you've got to get the guitar strung up so that it becomes a drum. You get a better response that way. Plus, it's a real response. You can tap it without stringing it up. You see all the pictures of the famous luthier guys, the guys that build, and they've got the thing up in their ear, and they're tapping for the certain tone and everything. And, that's a valid technique. I don't do that. I'm not really tapping for a certain tone. I'm tapping for a certain feel and resonance. And, it's just what my muse says. That's it there. That's what that's what this guitar is going to sound good. Or at least better, Okay, so with all that said, this is a piano hammer Mario Poo sent me many years ago. And you can also use your finger. You can use anything consistent. The problem with your fingers is they vary. So you got a fat part on your thumb and you got a knuckle. And those are good for getting different tones out of the instrument. Like how does it respond to your thumb? How does it respond to your knuckle? Those bring out different tones. And so those are pretty valid too. But I'm going to use this hammer here to make a consistent sort of sound on it. So, non-scalloped D28, and it's sitting on the bench, and everything's going to be the same. The bench is probably going to rattle, but what we got to listen to is the tone of this guitar. Okay, so let's listen to it. Tapping on various parts of the bridge just to get a feel for the different sorts of tones that those are going to produce. And these have plastic pins in them, which I'm sure is going to change the tone a little bit, but they're still plastic. I'm still going to put antique acoustics. They're just going to be a harder plastic, okay? Let's do it again, and then we'll go straight to one of the other guitars, and I won't say anything in between. Okay, let's do this again. This time I'm going to hold the guitar up like this, and I'm going to tap on it with the flat of my hand. Different tone, you'll see. Alright, you have the advantage of hearing these immediately back to back on the video, whereas I have to walk over there and pick up another one. But what I'm listening for there is the difference in the woof. And there's two things there's two things you're listening for here. You're listening for the depth of the tone, boom, 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 versus boom, boom, boom. You're also listening for the woof. That comes from the scallop tone bars, and so the woof is like this. Wah, 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 wah. It's an echo. It's an echo is what it is, as opposed to just a sharp tone. Wah, wah, wah. So the woof has an echo, but it's got a sustain to it. Yeah, both of those things are probably what's going on there. A non-woofy guitar that's low pitched is going to go, again, wah, wah, wah. And when it has woof, it's more of a wah, 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 wah. There's something else in there, you know. I can sort of imitate it, but I can't necessarily describe it. Wah, wah. Let me see. It's that kind of thing, you know. As opposed, you hear it in there. I've already said it too many times. Anyway, it's a woof. That woof comes from the scalloped tone bars. I don't necessarily like that in a guitar. Depends on the purpose. You know, it's great for knocking the banjo player over because it's a percussion. Boom, it goes over there. But it's hard on microphones. It'll boom out. It's called booming out the microphone. Boom. And it causes that microphone to pop, and you don't get the tone of the guitar. And that's why bright, nasally guitars most of the time will mic better than a woofy guitar. So when I do a 70s conversion, I don't really want it to get too woofy. I want it to still sound like a 70s, but I just want to get rid of some of the nasally bass. The nasally bass is the opposite of the woof. So the nasally bass is a tight, compressed tone, really compressed. So, you know, it's the total opposite of woof. I'm not sure what the words are that I want to describe that, but the woof and the nasaliness are a little bit different from the actual pitch of the sound. So what I'm shooting for is a little bit deeper, richer bass, but without making it woofy. So your stock D28 is going to be pretty bright, and the bass is going to be very nasally. I illustrated this in the other video, what I'm looking for when I listen to a guitar. I don't like nasally bass most of the time, but I want it punchy. I don't want it shapeless and formless. Like you look at the extremes on this, an upright bass. Not all the time. Really good upright basses have a punchy sound to them. And that's one reason why bluegrass players like plywood basses. Whereas orchestra guys like, with the bow are after a different sort of sound. And they like solid tops and richer, more violin type sounds. But in a bluegrass ensemble, an acoustic ensemble, you like that tight, punchy bass. And you get that more from plywood basses. At least plywood basses can produce that sound. Not to say that a good solid type bass can't. But that bass sound is big and broad and not quite as punchy and tight. Think about the difference if you play electric bass. Think about the difference between a precision and a jazz bass. The jazz bass typically, because the pickup is closer to the bridge, has a punchy sound, tight punchy sound, and it's different from a P bass. And I'm just giving you some illustrations here. You know, obviously you can make one sound kind of like the other and that kind of sort of thing, but that's the idea we're after here, is that tight, focused, but still deep. So it's kind of a tricky thing to get, you know, but I have discovered over the many, many years of doing this that when you have a rear X guitar as opposed to a forward X guitar, you got a rear X guitar, scalloped X braces, non-scalloped tone bars. That's a really good way to get a fuller bass. I'm not going to say rich yet, but the bass is fuller, non-nasally, punchy, but deeper in tone. That's the sound I'm looking for. Let's talk about, for instance, mid to late 40s Martin D's, where they have the tapered bracing. That's a nice sound. However, in my experience, it takes about 80 years to get that sound. A tapered bass guitar, right, Brandon, is not my cup of tea. It sounds too nasally. I think those guitars have got to really age for a long time to where the bracing gets weaker, and then that's when they really start sounding good. And they still sound a little bit nasally all by themselves, but boy, they really cut. So as an example of this, Tony Rice on the guitar album with Freeborn Man, Salt Creek, and all that, he's using that late 40s D28. He's not using the Clarence White guitar. And amazingly, everybody hates to hear this, but he's also using that same guitar on the California Autumn album and also on the Rounder 044 album. And to me, man, that's the sound. I always liked that sound. Not that I don't like the antique. I do like the antique. The antique's like a piano. It's rich. But that guitar on the Tony Rice guitar album and the J.D. Crowe and the New South Rounder 044, that guitar has just got so much grit and punch and aggressiveness to it. Maybe Tony was playing it different back then, but it's an aggressive sound. Whereas the antique is silkier, smoother, piano, richer sound, you know, jazzier sound. It's different. You know, it's a slinky sound. It's a wonderful sound, don't get me wrong. We'd all love to have that antique. But I'm just saying, the sound that first caught my ear was Tony Rice's guitar, and that aggressive break that he does on Freeborn Man. That just, wow, man, that's it for me, you know. That's the sound that I would like to have. So that's a tapered bass guitar as far as, you know, that's a tapered bass guitar. It takes it a long time to get there. That's the sort of sound I'm after on the 70s conversions. I'm after that aggressive, gritty sound. I'm not after the big woofy sound because I can't get it, number one, because it has rear X. And the only way to really get that woofy sound is with a forward X. And again, one guitar that I would really like to try, a forward X brace with scalloped X and non-scalloped tone bars. I'd like to hear how that sounds. And I think the Dan Kaminsky model is like that. I'm not positive. I have to go chase down all the specs on these things. But I'd be really interested to hear that. Forward X, scalloped X braces, non-scalloped tone bars. That'd be interesting, you know. Okay, so there's some tap tones, and I'm going to go scallop that D28, and I'm actually just going to insert it back into here. So I've done a lot of talking about this, but we want to hear that guitar after it's scalloped. So I'm going to go ahead and scallop it. I'm going to re-record it here, and then I'm going to edit it back in earlier in the video so that you'll hear that guitar change. Okay? Last thing is this, I don't really actually do this comparison with all three guitars all the time. I've done those 70s so many times that I've got the sound that I want in my head, and I can tell a lot by flexing on the top. pushing down on that top to see how much flex is that. Is it a bouncy top, soft top? And I played the guitar a little bit too, which doesn't really make any difference because I can tell by that tone when I'm doing that. So I have that tone in my head, and I just know from experience that doing those two expressions like that first is going to get me pretty close to where I want. Then I let the guitar sit. It takes 2 to 6 months, maybe even 2 to 8 months for this newly scalloped guitar to really open up. And I can't tell you how many times I've had customers email me after 6 months, 8 months, and say, wow, man, I was playing the guitar in the jam and it just opened up, and everybody reeled back and said, oh my gosh, what did you do to your guitar just now? It can be that sudden sometimes. So when I'm doing the tapping on that guitar after the scallop, it's not going to sound quite where I want it. It's going to be a little bit short of where I would like to have that bass response, because I know that over time it's going to loosen up, and that's why the 40s take some time, because the bracing has to loosen up and relax a little bit. So again, that's just an experience thing, because I know roughly, I'm guessing how much that top is going to change. I would so much rather see that guitar again in 2 or 3 years and maybe scallop it a little bit more after that time if the customer wants that. But so far I've had pretty good success at hitting the mark. And really, we're not trying to hit a certain mark. What we're trying to do is just improve the nasal tone of the guitar a little bit, and then just let it be what it is. I'm not trying to change it into something else that it can't be, just trying to improve some of the weaknesses. Some of the points we don't like about stock 70s, okay? So when you listen to the guitar, again, which you've already done, because it's spliced in there, but when you listen to it post-scalloping, keep that in mind, that I'm not trying to hit the target right away. I'm trying to stop just a little bit short and then let it develop into that. So, okay, but that's just some of the process that goes through the scalloping business, as to why I decided to scallop a guitar and how much to scallop and that sort of thing. And obviously, how much to scallop depends a little bit on that top. If it's got any kind of hinkiness going in it, I'm not going to over scallop it. I'm going to stop short, because I don't want the top bellying up and caving in. And I've never had one do that, but I don't want it to happen. So if I have any question or any doubt, I'm going to stop a little bit short of where I want it, because I know that any scalloping is going to improve the nasal tone of the bass. So we're going to win no matter what. I'm also not trying to scallop to a certain pitch or tone or anything like that. I'm going for a feel. And I guess I am scalloping to a pitch, but it's not a specific pitch. I'm not setting my tuner up and doing it like you might with a mandolin or a violin, where you're tuning the top and the back plates differently so they don't create an echo. I might be doing that in practice, because I am listening to that overall sound. I'm not if it's discordant, I'm not gonna like that. But I'm listening for a certain response, a certain woof, certain thing that just sets off my radar detector. Okay, so just giving some thoughts into the thought process, some insight into the thought process that goes into these scalloping. All right. If you guys have any ideas or suggestions or things that you want to see, be sure you let me know in the comments. I had a guy ask me a bunch of questions about fretting, and then I realized I really don't have a single video on fretting. He had some issues with fretting, some problems that he was not getting his frets level quickly. And I thought, I don't have a single video on fretting. I've done it as part of a very long overhaul process in which I talk about things, but I need to address some specific points about what I'm trying to do when I'm fretting, and why I refuse to file frets down. I'm going to mark those frets, and I want that fret file to kiss it on real quick. And if I don't, I didn't do it right. So I'll talk about that. But if you have any suggestions about things like that, be sure to let me know. I'll try to cover them. I've had ideas on bridge pins. People have asked about bridge pins. A couple of people have asked about capos. Things like that. So, we'll see what we can do on those. Okay, see you later.